This is Jeremy Sports Network coming to you live. Hey, you guys, tonight, the Eastern Conference semifinals start with Cleveland taking on Toronto in last year's playoff rematch. And we have Houston in the Western Conference taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Those will be the two games that we will talk about on today. What are the keys to victory? What is each team going to have to do in order for them to win? And win just for tonight. And I'm going to give my prediction on the series for each for each four teams who can escape and make their way to the conference finals. So we're going to start with Cleveland, and we're going to talk about Cleveland Cavaliers and what Cleveland has to do in order for them to win against Toronto. Now, we're not going to talk about them playing Toronto in the regular season, because even though Cleveland won in the regular season 3-1, they played 3 of those games early in the regular season. And then the last game they played in game 82, a lot of the starters did not play. So we're going to wipe out what took place in the regular season between Toronto and Cleveland, and we're going to talk about the playoffs alone. Now, we talk about the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors started off very slow against the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Milwaukee Bucks was able to pretty much kind of handle Toronto to a point to where Toronto had to make some valid changes in order for them to win. Now, when you look at a team like Toronto, they're averaging 106 points per game. They're shooting 46% from the field as a team, and they're moving the ball more actually this year, more so than what they did last year, with the team averaging over 18.5 assists per game. So you see that they're doing things differently in Toronto this year, but is it enough for them to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers? Now, Cleveland, on the other hand, we all know Cleveland has been struggling defensively. A lot of teams say, well, they've been giving up. They gave up over 100 points each game against Indiana, and Indiana could have won a couple of those games if they would have played to the best of their abilities. But can Toronto be able to close out a game against Cleveland if they get down to the fourth quarter where the game is tight and you have to make some buckets in order to win? Now, Cleveland is a 6.5-point favorite in order to win this game, but we're going to talk about these teams in their last playoff appearances. The Indiana series for Cleveland, a lot of people say, well, hey, you have to wipe out that series alone because Cleveland played down to Indiana's level. I don't believe that. Indiana, a team who lacked any kind of offense, when you watch them play, it was more so Paul George, Lance Stevenson, and just a couple of sprinkles of guys here and there being able to knock down buckets. You have to kind of keep that series in mind, because Toronto now, as a team, they're playing better offensively with moving the ball, spacing out the floor. DeMar DeRozan slashing towards the getting to the free throw line. Kyle Lowry being able now to play to his best ability, even though he started out slow in the Milwaukee series, but he was able to battle back. You have to really pay attention to what Toronto can do to Cleveland in this game. Now, if you ask me, well, okay, who will win this series? I'm taking Cleveland to win this series in 6 like they did on last year, but I believe it's going to be a tough 6. I don't think it's going to be as easy as it was on last year. Now, when we talk about the Toronto Raptors and what they have to do in order to beat Cleveland and win this particular series, they're really going to have to get big-time games and big-time plays defensively from Serge Ibaka, Valanciunas. They're going to have to throw bodies at LeBron to slow LeBron down in order for them to win, and they're going to have big games offensively in order for them to win, because I believe Cleveland now has some players on this particular roster this year alone that can help offset what it is that Toronto is going to be able to do to Cleveland. Now, if you understand what it is where I'm coming from, this is what I'm talking about. Now, with Toronto, what you have to worry about is, okay, say they do everything right. against Cleveland. Everything right. But the X factors for Cleveland is they have Kyle Korver. That's the acquisition of Kyle Korver to me is one of the biggest moves that Cleveland has made because Kyle Korver can get you buckets and he can get you buckets in a short period of time. And that's what LeBron James needs is a good spot up shooter in order to offset some of the things it is that Toronto may do differently against Cleveland on this year alone. Now, when you look at the numbers, they kind of match up very well, close to each other. Cleveland is only averaging 110 points a game, but they're giving up 108. They're giving up 108 points a game, and they're averaging 110. So this is in the playoffs. In the playoffs alone, the numbers in the playoffs alone. They're averaging 110, but they're giving up 108. They're shooting 47% from the field as a team. But Cleveland moved the ball around so well where I told you Toronto was averaging over 18.5 in assists as a team. But also, if you look at Cleveland, they're averaging over 22.7. So Cleveland and LeBron, they're going to move the basketball. But the thing is, who's going to stop Kyrie Irving? It's not Kyle Lowry. Please stop. Throw that out the window. That's not going to happen. Kyrie Irving is going to get off. LeBron James is going to get off. But the thing is, with Cleveland, what LeBron said, and I really want people to pay attention and buy into what it is that LeBron said in his interview on today talking about the game. LeBron said that them being off for 8 days, the first 6 minutes of this game is going to be very crucial for Cleveland. Now, the reason why LeBron said the first 6 minutes is going to be crucial, a lot of people saying, well, if they go down, we seen LeBron and them come back from 26 down. Just in the past series against Indiana. That is true. But the first 6 minutes, they're going to have to get themselves back in a rhythm together as a unit and as a team because it's now in the playoffs. They're going to have to get themselves back in a rhythm to where now if they don't get in a rhythm and they're struggling in the first 6 minutes, and then that 6 minutes can go into the second quarter to where they could be down. You don't want to be down to a team like Toronto at all, period, because Toronto, they can match you up well defensively because they only giving up 93 points a game. So that means they do play defense as well. So if they could match up very well with Cleveland defensively, but if Cleveland starts out slow, then they don't want to have to battle back each single game coming down 20 points. 15 points, 10 points to a Toronto squad to where they're not going to be able to last if they have to do that every single game. They're not. But is Cleveland going to lose this series? Absolutely not. They're not going to lose this series. You see Toronto struggled with a Milwaukee team where they were very close games. I mean, they beat Milwaukee, 92-89, 118. They had the one blowout game where it was 118. Well, it was one blowout game where it was 118-93. Then they had another win, 87-76. And then they lost one game, 104-77, which was a blowout game for Milwaukee. And then they won game one, 106-100. So the thing is, Cleveland has to be better defensively, and they have to catch their rhythm early because they've been off for 8 days. Now, I do believe Cleveland is going to do everything possible in order for them to win this series. Now, when we talk about the players in this particular matchup in this series, you got DeMar DeRozan, who's averaging over 27 a game, and Valanciunas, who is playing very well with rebounding and defensive rebounding. They're going to need that big against Cleveland. He's going to really have to battle with Tristan Thompson on the board, and that is going to be a great matchup, Valanciunas versus Tristan Thompson, that we're going to have to look for in the trenches. A lot of people are not talking about that matchup, but whoever win that matchup in the trenches and be able to get those rebounds and those extra possessions for their team are going to be very successful in game one. Kyle Lowry, we know Kyle Lowry needs to take his game up to a whole nother level in competing with Kyrie Irving in this matchup, because right now Kyle Lowry needs to play point guard Kyle Lowry instead of trying to be a scorer in Kyle Lowry. He has to play the point guard position to the best of his ability in order to defeat Cleveland, because we know that Cleveland can mismatch and put you in positions to where you may look as if you're struggling really bad with them, and they're only, and to a lot of people in Cleveland who are going to be watching the game are going to be like, this is easy. This is like last year. But you don't want that to happen if you're Toronto. Toronto, you're going to have to step up to the plate tonight in order to play Cleveland to the best of your abilities. Now, do I believe that they're going to win? Absolutely not. I believe that Cleveland is going to win game one. They're going to get off to a fast start because they're going to want to get off to a fast start in this series. And I think it's going to be too much for Toronto right now, given the fact that they're going to have to see what Cleveland is going to show them. Cleveland is going to have to show their hand, and Toronto is going to have to counter after that. I don't believe Toronto has anything in them in order to win game one based upon matchups in order to beat Cleveland and make Cleveland make the necessary adjustments towards them. I think it'll be Cleveland getting off to a fast start, winning game one, and Toronto having to make their adjustments in game two. That's what I'm believing. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen on tonight. Big shots out to Cleveland and LeBron James for them being able to close out their series. We know that LeBron is undefeated in game ones of any series that he has been in. So it's going to be tough for Toronto to come to Cleveland tonight and beat Cleveland. Now, what's going to happen throughout the series? Like I said, I have Cleveland winning this series in 6. In 6. So moving right along, we're going to go ahead and move over to the Western Conference, where we got the Houston Rockets taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Houston played a hell of a series against OKC. We was able to see 2 MVPs go at it with James Harden versus Russell Westbrook. Man, like, if you did not tune in to that particular series alone, you missed out on a great series, because those two guys went at each other. They went at each other to the point to where they felt as though the MVP was going to be decided upon this particular playoff game. But a lot of people that told me, I was a firm believer that thinking like, hey, whoever balls in that particular series was going to win the MVP. But people were saying, well, no, you have to think about it. The MVP is a regular season award. Well, I was like, well, if that's the case, then they need to announce the MVP and the winner of the MVP at the end of the regular season, instead of letting it linger on into the playoffs, because it can change a lot of votes. That's what a lot of people don't want to talk about, is the simple fact that they wait so long to announce who's going to be the winner of the MVP, that when you have those two players going up against each other and we see what we saw in that particular series, it could change the mind of some of the voters. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion and my opinion alone. But we're going to get back to this series. San Antonio Spurs played Memphis, and Memphis battled. See, this is what scares me about San Antonio. You battle with a Memphis squad who really did not play to their full potential and have Tony Allen, and they were still able to compete with you and made San Antonio look as though they were very vulnerable in that series. So you're going up against a Houston Rockets team who blow teams off the court. They move the basketball. They have scores galore on their squad. They spread out the floor, and they play very well together. And they're healthy. They're more healthier than what Memphis was. And so you would think, okay, Houston can really take San Antonio. And to me, I believe Houston will take on San Antonio and beat San Antonio. They're going to beat, I believe San Antonio does not have enough in order to win against the Houston Rockets. Now, Houston are going to have to play some great defense in order to win this game. Kawhi Leonard, to me, hands down, is the second best player in the NBA. next to LeBron James. Now, if you want to sit there and say, well, he should be the #1 overall player now because of what he does on the offense and defensive side of the ball, let's not get it twisted. LeBron James is still the man in the NBA. He is the #1 player in the NBA. And then you can say Kawhi Leonard right after that because of what he poses to and what he do for his team. But we're talking about this particular series against the Houston Rockets. Kawhi Leonard, I don't think Kawhi Leonard will be able to do it alone in order to stop Houston because Houston can get buckets. They average over 115 points a game, even though they give up 104 points, but that's the same kind of average of what it is that San Antonio score a game. They score 105 points a game. So really, it plays in Houston's favor if you look at the numbers that Houston could win this particular game because of the points that they score per game. And San Antonio would not be able to stop it. But San Antonio, with being a great defensive team, only been giving up 96 points per game in the playoffs. Now, Houston is much better, more offensive team than what Memphis was. Like, let's not get it twisted. Houston can score. James Harden can get to the basket. But the thing is James Harden going to be able to do enough to get his team acclimated for them to win? I believe so. They're going to play San Antonio, who has the home court advantage in this particular series. Houston is going to have to come on the road, and they're going to have to at least steal a game in San Antonio to go back and win 2 games at home in order to win this series. And I have Houston winning this series in 6. In 7. My bad. I'm sorry. I picked Houston to win this series against San Antonio in 7, with Houston coming back to San Antonio to win Game 7. That's what I have for this particular series alone. I mean, hands down, you got James Harden, who's averaging over 29 points a game with 8 rebounds and 11 assists. Like, he is almost averaging a triple-double in the playoffs. You know, he's 2 rebounds shy of averaging a triple-double in the playoffs versus to where you have Kawhi Leonard, who's averaging over 25, shooting 48% from the field. But Pau Gasol, he's going to have to step up and have a big game. And Tony Parker is going to have to be the Tony Parker of old if he can be able to do anything to offset what it is that Houston's going to do. He's going to have to control, being a point guard, he's going to have to control the game. That's what I believe. He's going to have to control the game, control the clock to where San Antonio plays San Antonio basketball, and you make Houston, instead of getting out on the court, getting out on the floor and run and shooting up spot-up threes, you're going to have to make Houston play to your game if you're Tony Parker and the San Antonio Spurs. And I believe Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, and those guys will be able to do that a little bit. But I think the scoring of Houston will be overwhelming, and that Houston will be able to outscore San Antonio in order to win this game in Game 1. So I'm picking them to win Game 1. And I'm picking them to win this series in 7 against San Antonio. I do like San Antonio a lot, but I still don't think San Antonio has enough in order to win against a scoring team like the Houston Rockets. Because if you talk about the Houston Rockets in the same breath as the Golden State Warriors as far as how they play offensively, then it serves bad for San Antonio, because San Antonio can't even compete with Golden State offensively. And we saw that throughout the regular season. Golden State made them look really easy. And can Houston do the same, with Houston being a scoring offense that they are? They score. They score the basketball. Mike D'Antoni believes in his offense. They play enough defense in order for their offense to be more overwhelming than anything. Now, they are picking San Antonio being the favorites to win this game by 5. But like I said, if you really pay attention, San Antonio is going to have to play some hell of a defense, and not just from Kawhi Leonard. They're not going to just have to have a big game from Kawhi Leonard, but you're going to need a few steals from Tony Parker, Manu having to step up, Patty Mills having to step. These guys Guys are going to have to step up in order for San Antonio to be able to slow down Houston. Do I believe it's going to happen? Absolutely not. Not in game one. I still think Houston is clicking on all cylinders. James Harden is playing the best basketball of his career right now, and he seems to be almost unstoppable. He's going to get to the foul line. He's going to score buckets. And does Houston have enough to stop that? It remains to be seen. But tune in tonight. Like I said, I have Cleveland winning against Toronto in 6, and I have San Antonio losing to the Houston Rockets in 7. This is Jeremy Sports Network coming to you live. Make sure you follow me on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps with the visibility of the show. And also make sure you follow me on Facebook at Jeremy Sports Network. It's Jeremy Sports Network signing out. Peace.